Okay, let's get started with that. Oh, my webcam somehow is washed out. Let me fix that quickly. It seems that this is drawing a smaller crowd if we're talking about Scrum than the general Agile topics I usually talk about. So that's interesting for me to see. Still, happy for the people who are here. And Scrum, why do I talk about Scrum today? This Scrum is the most widely used Agile framework. Now, you don't have to use an Agile framework, obviously, to be Agile. Many of the great Agile companies don't use any frameworks. But frameworks are a great way to get started, get familiar, learn how agility feels. And it's not only training wheels, it's also that experienced Agile teams often still use these frameworks, especially Scrum. So it's worth looking into that, because the problem of the widespread adoption of Scrum, that it's so popular, has been so popular over the years, is that it's often misunderstood. And today I want to dive into the 5 Scrum events, all the 5 Scrum events, from the sprint planning over the daily Scrum, the sprint review, the retrospective, and the sprint itself. Yes, the sprint is also a Scrum event. Look at these 5 events and look at some very common mistakes or misunderstandings that I have seen over the years. I've been doing this Agile thing for more than 2 decades now. So I've been in the game when there was no money to be made in that game. I really believe in this. I'm not doing this just for the money. Today, yes, you can make some money with that. 20 years ago, no chance. You'd better be quiet that you do something with Agile. just do the work. Let the people see the results. Let them pay you for the results, but don't tell them that it's Agile or Scrum or anything. I actually learned Scrum from one of the creators, from Ken Schwaber. It's great. He's also a great teacher, workshop designer. So I learned it from him, and you can probably, the people who know him can feel that in some of my opinions. There's some strong opinions connected to that. So this is pretty much from the source. Still, if you feel that I'm misinterpreting something or that you have different experiences, because I'm only talking from my 20 years of experience, and that's limited because I'm just one person, then chime in, please. Put it in the comments. Let me know if you have a different opinion or different experience, because that's important. We have to learn from each other. And despite all the projects and works and companies we did, we have to stay humble and be able to learn. I mean, that's a big point in agility. So now let's get started with this thing. Let me see if I can share that with you, because I have a little presentation. Don't want to bore you with slides. Don't worry. I hope that the sound works though. Let me see if I can make the sound work for you. And I have to probably see that I check it on my device on the side. So, what they didn't tell you about the Scrum events. We will go through all 5 of them, and I will just list what I've seen. And you can also chime in and tell me maybe what your experiences are. Okay, so Scrum. Maybe towards the end I can go into more of the underlying Agile things that are going on, why these things are misinterpreted and where that comes from, and how you as an Agile coach, for example, can cut through this. That's only if time permits. That's the important part that I usually talk about, that is underlying Scrum. Because just by doing Scrum, you're not going to be Agile, okay? Especially if you have this misunderstanding of agility. Or not agility, of Scrum in that particular case. So, this is waterfalling the Scrum, what people usually call it. And it's more like, you see the 5 events here, but totally misinterpreted. So, the sprint planning is handing out tasks to people. Then we are waterfalling the Scrum because we basically chunk all our things up into 2-week chunks. And this is just like a design sprint. Then we have an implementation. We have 5 implementation sprints. Then we have a test sprint. Things like that. That's waterfalling the Scrum. Total anti-pattern. Don't do it. This is why I put it in red. This is what people get wrong. The daily Scrum is then a daily status report for the project managers. At the end, you check the progress in the sprint review and you discuss problems in the retrospective. This is all wrong. Just to be clear, don't take this seriously, okay? This is all wrong. This is the total misunderstanding of Scrum. But sadly, it's what I see a lot of times out there when I work with companies. That this is their understanding of what Scrum would be. And it's totally wrong. It will not make you agile. It will not get you any benefits. Okay? And again, if we have time towards the end, what's underlying all this to interpret it in the right way is a different view of the human being in general. That's what some people call the agile mindset. And it's more elaborate than just the mindset or the Agile Manifesto. It goes much deeper. But that would kind of be too much for this session. This is what I do in the Agile Coach Education Program over half a year, okay? But maybe we can touch on some of that towards the end. And I see I'm floating in the air, but I hope you don't mind. Let's start with the sprint planning, and let me also check the sound on this one. Let's see if that works.
I have a hard but rewarding task for you. How am I gonna...
Okay, now let me quickly check whether you could hear that, because I wait for the delay here. So give me a second to check. Let's see if that works. Oh yeah, it worked. Wonderful. Okay. Then everything's fine. So I have a hard but rewarding task for you. This is a misunderstanding about the sprint planning is the assigning tasks event. It is not. Okay? In 2 ways. The first way you probably already know, all of you. You don't assign tasks to people. Please, never. Thanks for the feedback on the sound. Yeah. Thank you. Assigning tasks. You don't assign tasks to people. In an agile environment, we trust people. We have people pull the work. There are many reasons why we do that. So people self-assign the tasks. You never assign something to someone else. That's why I also don't like tools like Jira, where it's by default you can assign stuff to other people. I don't think this is very agile. I mean, a tool is neutral. It's neither agile nor not agile, but it can kind of, especially if you're not experienced, you can be seduced by that. never assign tasks to other people. 2 reasons for that. Before I go to the next reason, that's probably not as well known. So why don't we assign tasks to people? First of all, this is from lean production, from Kanban. A pull system automatically balances. So you don't create bottlenecks. If you push stuff into a system and you have to constantly figure out how much you can push in so that you don't get into bottlenecks and things just pile up at a certain place. And that's difficult. The much better way is to let people pull from the end. And then once they pull, you can, all the things get pulled up the chain until so it automatically adjusts for capacity. This is not a Kanban lesson today. So it's just the pull principle. You can Google that, the pull principle. That's one reason. It's just sensible. It's efficient. It's what makes lean production work. It's what propelled Toyota to be the leading car manufacturer from the 80s on until Tesla came along. And now they learn from Tesla. And Tesla also does that. They also have that. They do lean production. They do kind of much more crazy and elaborate and modern version of it, but it's still in there, the pull principle. Let people pull the work. The second reason why we do that is we trust people. Comes back to the view of the human being. We trust people to do the work. We don't assume that people sit idle and try to do as little work as possible and not pick any tasks. If you have that view of your employees or of your teammates or of other human beings, then Scrum will not work for you. You have to assume positive intent. You have to assume that people want to do work. Intrinsic motivation is the key word here. You can look up McGregor's stuff on management theory X and management theory Y. So we acknowledge that intrinsic motivation exists. And the first studies and experiments have been done in the 1950s on that. And the latest since then, we know about the power of intrinsic motivation and that you don't have to dangle a carrot in front of people or push stuff onto them to make them work. So, simple thing, you don't assign. So the product owner is not the person saying, oh, here, Charlie, you're going to do this feature and Mary, you're going to do these 2 features. No, that's not how the sprint planning looks like. A second thing why you don't, okay, now let people pull the work. So just put it out there. What's the goal for the sprint? We get to the goal. And then what are the items that we pick that we want to do or should get done? And then let the team members pick which one they will do. There is one caveat here that usually we have user stories in the backlog. And user stories are cross-functional by nature. They are not a back-end feature, a front-end feature, a hardware feature, a software feature. It's a mix of all. This is the nature of user stories. And so multiple people will probably pick a certain thing and work on it together. Now, why do I advise against picking the stuff in the sprint planning? Even if it's the developers themselves picking it or the engineers, the people doing the work. The reason why I advise against that is assigning tasks early or picking tasks early blocks progress. The metaphor I tried to put into a little image here is that you might know that from a vacation, you are at a hotel, and when you get up in the morning, or let's start by that. Some people get up very early in the morning. They go to the pool, they put a towel on a sunbed to reserve it. Then they go back to sleep. They sleep until lunchtime or something. They want to make sure that they have a sunbed when they wake up. Now, a little later, to a just normal time, you wake up, you go to the pool, and although most of the sunbeds are not occupied, you cannot get a sunbed because they are all reserved. So we have created an artificial resource bottleneck here. We have enough sunbeds, but because of the reserving, we still need more. You cannot get a sunbed. And this is kind of what happens if every developer picks their user stories in the sprint planning. You kind of put your towel on it. It's reserved. Others will not use your sunbed or work on your user story because they don't want to tread on your territory. They want to be good teammates. Or something sometimes it's another thinking. It's, hey, this is your stuff. You put yourself into that. Okay, I'm not gonna get involved into that. I have my pile of work over here. And you can imagine that this doesn't create a great team spirit. It doesn't lead people to helping each other. And it just creates artificial bottlenecks because maybe the senior developer picked an important story and reserved it, put their name to it. And then the others start working on lower priority stuff. And the senior developer gets stuck. It happens. It's nobody's fault. It just happens. And at the end of the sprint, you will have the unimportant user stories finished, but the most important one is still not finished. Why? Because it was reserved and the people, instead of swarming to help the senior developer, they just said, oh, I'm going to work on my stuff. And that's the problem if you reserve too early in the sprint planning. I've seen that over and over again. Of course, you can kind of say, I'm going to start today with this user story, or we two gonna work on this, and we other two, we're going to work on this. That is fine. Pick your first battle. That's okay. But don't reserve everything. That doesn't create a great team spirit, and it creates bottlenecks. So that was it about assigning tasks. Let's look at a little more. Licking the cookie is nice. Yeah, I love that. Can I use that? I want to create a picture of that, licking a user story and just putting it back. So, more stuff that happens in the sprint planning.
Frankton, that's just beautiful. But more importantly, where do you want to go?
Yeah, that face is what I see on some product owners' faces sometimes. Where do you want to go? No sprint goal. I see so many Scrum teams doing sprints without having a sprint goal. They think a sprint goal would be optional, nice to have. If you can create one, it's nice, but if not, it's not the end of the world. But a sprint goal is it's the most important thing, I would say. To me, it's more important that you have a sprint goal. And maybe you don't even have the user stories yet. Maybe you create them on the fly while you go in the sprint. That is fine for me. But just having a bunch of user stories and no sprint goal is not fine for me. That's my experience. Let me know what your experience is. You see, when teams have a sprint goal, a clear goal, they know where to go. They know what they are focusing on. They can replan, rearrange when things go wrong, or things don't work out as planned. They can quickly rearrange and keep the focus on the goal to deliver something at the end. And if they don't have a goal, what I often see are these random mixed bags of user stories. So they are totally unconnected. There's a story here, and then there's someone working on some totally different thing here and thing here. If you would ask this person, if their spouse asks them, what are you going to do, or what did you work on the last 2 weeks? They cannot answer that in a sentence. They would just list the tasks they did, which is a telltale sign that you're lacking a goal. You want to be able to tell someone, oh yeah, we worked on the payment functionality. That's it. For example, that's you can now also pay with PayPal instead of just credit card. That's what we worked on, or what we will be working on. That can be a sprint goal. To me, not having a sprint goal is, just imagine not having a goal. A team without a goal is not a team. Because what happens is, if you don't have a goal, then you end up with basically each individual having their own to-do lists. So in the sprint planning, basically each and every one picks their to-do list, and it's kind of canonical who does what because of the skills. So it's not a real team. It's like when you have a football game and you give everybody their own ball and their own goal. That's not a team. That's not the purpose of the thing. The purpose is that you have one goal, literally in a football game. You have one goal and you collaborate towards that goal. You have to pass, you have to kind of share roles and help each other out to reach that goal. It's not that everyone has their own goal and their own ball. So, very important. Have a sprint goal. Well, imagine how effective or ineffective the daily Scrum will be inspecting and adapting their progress towards nothing. Yeah, thank you. That's exactly the point. Getting to that later when we talk about the daily Scrum. The sprint goal is very important in the daily Scrum because it's what it's revolving around. You look at, are we on track towards the sprint goal? Do we have to adapt our sprint plan towards that? Do we have to take out user stories, cut user stories in smaller pieces, or even include new ones? How can we make our sprint goal? If you don't have that focused goal, then all you can do is talk about the tasks you did. And that's obviously not a nice daily Scrum, as we all know. So, and also when you at the end, when we go to the review, without a sprint goal, it's hard to get feedback. I mean, what do you want to ask your customers? If it's, hey, now you can pay with PayPal, and in addition to credit cards, how does that work? Is that okay for you? Does it work with your PayPal account and so on? Do you have to pay any fees and stuff? They can play around with it and they give you feedback. But if you have a list of tasks like, oh, we added a table to the database and then we rewrote this documentation and something like, you cannot get meaningful feedback from a customer or from a user. They will be confused or just, outright not want to give you feedback. So no sprint goal. The problem with sprint goals though is that I've seen when I push for having sprint goals, then teams come up with this. You say we need sprint goals. We have one. It's finish all 30 user stories on the backlog. No, that's not a valid sprint goal. Okay? A sprint goal cannot be finish the sprint, do the user stories, or do the tasks assigned to you, complete them. That's not sprint goals. To illustrate it, I have a few example sprint goals. So it should be focused on the user, creating value for the user. Here are just a few examples. Customer support can now search for customers by last name. That could be something. That could be useful for customer support, and they can try it out in the sprint review and give you feedback whether that's good for them, whether they need to see 100 people on one page or just 10 people, or which data, which attributes they need to see. So you get meaningful feedback on that. Material engineers can approve new model designs in the software. I just worked with a big hardware manufacturing company, actually Europe's biggest manufacturing company. And they had exactly that. Like material engineers, they need to kind of build new models. It needs to go, which parts can we source and what's the calculations on that, so that they can do that in the software. And this was just one thing they presented in a review or in a demo. It was a safe demo there. Or we want to validate whether requiring a credit card during signups will decrease conversion rate by less than 15%. Could also be a sprint goal. And then you kind of figure out how you can achieve that. So these are just examples. There might be different sprint goals, but this is a sprint goal, not this. Okay, that's important. Another little tip, I don't have a thing here. I sometimes use the tweet generator. You can just Google that, tweet generator, and you can create these fake tweets. Maybe now it's called X generator, I don't know. Probably still tweet generator. You can create these little fake tweets from people. And what we used to do in several teams was that in sprint planning, we created a tweet, which is limited in characters, that we would send out at the end of the sprint when we are done. So something like, we are happy to announce that our customer support people can now also search by last name and see the credit score immediately. Something like that. You don't have to send out that tweet. The only thing here is that the character restriction forces you to write a concise sprint goal. And it's just fun. And we saved screenshots of these little fake tweets. We never sent them out, actually. So it was just for fun. But I liked it, and it's just a little tip from me to make it more fun. It also prevents you to have a sprint goal that is, oh, we want to do this feature, and 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 because there's no room, okay? Nice little tip on the side. Go to a tweet generator, tweetgen.com, or however they are called. There are multiple of these.
You've got a big surprise coming to you.
Yeah, surprise. This is also the product owner sometimes. The Scrum Guide even says the job of the product owner is to limit surprises to the team. So limiting surprises is you talk to the team about the upcoming stories and the topic of the sprint you want to do. Usually you have refinement sessions for that. You prepare them so that the team, everyone on the team already knows what's coming up. I mean, there can be short-term, last-minute things coming in. That is fine. But just if only the product owner knows what's coming up and then surprises the team in the sprint planning. Hey, surprise, this is what we're gonna work on, what you're gonna work on in the next 2 weeks. That's hard because there might be questions, there might be things coming up where they say, oh, wait, this is too big, we have to slice it. This is an epic, this is far too big. Or, hey, we have a question to you, dear product owner, and the product owner is not able to answer that on the spot. You might have to do some research or interview a few customers to clarify the question. So you cannot take the stories into the sprint. Or if you take them into the sprint, they are not well defined. And that usually leads to them not getting finished and people being unsatisfied. Of course, you can refine stories on the spot. Sometimes, if you don't have to do research or get back to customers. But it makes, in my experience, it makes sprint plannings very grudgingly long and boring. So I would advise to have refinement sessions, to just have refinement sessions to prepare, to talk about what's coming up so that the product owner knows the questions of the engineers know what the customers will want to have and what's coming up so they can prepare. Include everyone in the product vision. Don't let them fly blind and surprise them.
It's on my to-do list.
What?
Yeah, I talked about that on my to-do list. Everybody getting their separate to-do list. I already covered that a little. So if basically you don't collaborate towards a common goal, but everyone has their own ball and their own goal and their own to-do list, and they meet in the sprint planning everyone gets their to-do list. They split up. They work in parallel, although they are a team, but they hardly communicate during the sprint. They don't see any sense in the daily scrum because they have their own separate to-do lists, and I'm not interested in your to-do list and you're not interested in mine. And then at the end, they each present in the review what they did, and also there's no interest by the others in that. That's not what we want, okay? It's not about that. This is a team sport. Building products, building great value is a team sport. And user stories, if you write them or if you formulate them in the correct way, they are cross-functional. So that a user story can be worked on by just one person in the team should be an exception. The rule should be that multiple people have to collaborate on a user story to get it done. So don't give everyone their own to-do list. This is also separates the team. This is also then, it's not a team. It doesn't feel like a team, okay? It's also horrible in terms of resource allocation, as we said when initially when you distribute that, and one person might be faster and one person might struggle at a certain point, and yeah, you don't help each other out.
Obviously doesn't have enough to do.
Yeah, not enough to do. That's the horror of many managers. Oh, the team, do you still have room? Can we put in another story? We have to maximize utilization. You're only 80% busy. We have to push that to 99% or 100% busy time. And the people of you who know something about lean production or Kanban know what's coming. Maximum utilization is not the goal. Some traditional managers, also some engineers, think it is. It's not. You don't want to have maximum utilization and everything full to the brim. Because we cannot predict the future. That's the thing that we acknowledge in agility, humbly. We cannot predict the future. So we have to account for the unaccountable. And we have to leave some room, some slack, some wiggle room. And a wonderful metaphor to understand this is think about a highway with cars on it. Okay? Having a 4-lane highway and just one car an hour is not a good utilization. I get that. Okay? It's kind of a waste of resources, all that asphalt. But do you know what the technical term is for 100% utilization of a highway? Exactly. It's called traffic jam. That's the word. That's a technical term. Traffic jam. 100% utilization of the asphalt, almost. And nothing is moving, no value created, everyone is angry. Nothing moves through. So this is not what you want. You want a utilization that is somewhere between 0 and 100%. Okay? Not too low, but also not too high. And it's different for each team. This is, look into Kanban to find where your thing is. It's usually in Kanban you work with work in process limits or work in progress limits. To do that, in Scrum we work with sprints. So we have the sprint and the velocity. That's kind of the similar thing. So we limit what we can take into a sprint. We measure the velocity, how much we can take in. We adjust for that. And we also always want to have room for the unforeseen. We don't want to create a traffic jam. Okay, leave some room. If the driver in front of you brakes, you want to have time to react and to change lanes and to keep flowing, keep driving down the road and not just bumper to bumper and then creating a traffic jam. It's not about keeping people busy, okay? This is the message to the managers. You don't want to keep people busy. That's not the job of a company. A customer doesn't pay for you to be busy. They pay for you to create value. And that's a different thing. People can be busy all the time and create no value at all. And then people can be not so busy and create insane amounts of value. So focus on creating value, not on keeping people busy. Again, this image of, or this understanding that we have to keep people busy or they might be lazy, builds on an ancient view of the human being. A one in which people think other people would be lazy in trying to avoid work unless you constantly push them, incentivize them, and tell them what to do. That's not true. Look into behavioral science, look into psychology, everything since the middle of the last century, okay? There's a lot of stuff. People want to do great stuff. You just have to create the environment so that they can. You don't have to push them. You don't have to assume they are lazy, okay? Okay, to summarize that about the sprint planning. This was a long one. Maybe we cannot get through all of the others, or I have to be faster. Sprint planning. Collaborate as a team towards a common goal. That's important. Don't make it separate to-do lists. This is not the purpose. Now to the daily scrum. You already said something about the daily scrum, yeah. By the way, the daily scrum is a so misunderstood thing that I even wrote an entire book on it. Yes, on that 15-minute small event, I wrote an entire book. Probably you cannot scan the QR code now, but you can find the book if you're interested in that. Or you can just write me. Let me know. So it's especially the things that go wrong in the daily scrum, why teams hate the daily scrum often, and why they don't get value out of it. And what you can do, or to see the signs before it actually becomes a problem, and then fix them and turn the daily scrum into an insanely valuable thing that teams actually look forward to. Okay, and that can actually increase productivity. Because this is what it is there for. It's just often misunderstood.
Engineering status report.
Yeah, engineering status report. This is what, sadly, many people turn the daily scrum into. They think it's a status report. It's like, okay, Captain, yesterday I did this and this and that. Today I will do this and this and that. I have no problem, sir. No, sir. Next. This is kind of, yeah, actually what many daily scrums look like when I see them. And obviously there is no value for the team members, for the developers in that. Just reporting stuff, they know what they will do. There's no value in reporting that stuff. And also for a manager or someone who might be there, if they want the status, go look into your freaking Jira, or come to the every 2 weeks to the sprint review and see the tangible product. And in between, trust people that they will do the work. Don't bother them with reporting a stupid status every day. That is a waste of time. And that, in my experience, is the primary reason why so many teams hate the daily scrum and abandon it after a short amount of time. Because it's not a daily scrum, it's a status report for them. Okay, so this is not a status report. There are many tips that I have. It's all in that book that I just showed you. For example, as a Scrum Master, don't focus the daily scrum only on you. The developers should get value out of it. So occasionally, don't be there as a Scrum Master. Let them do it. They should get value out of it. Also, if they all report to you, they look at you, or you ask the question and prompt the people to speak, try to steer them away from that. Try to not call out the person. Try to have them not look at you as the Scrum Master. Try to have them look at each other. Collaborate as a team, because that's the purpose. Okay. This status report thing comes from this old Tayloristic management view. Okay, scientific management, Tayloristic management from more than 100 years ago. That's not what we want here. We trust people to get the work done. Okay? The daily Scrum has a different purpose. It's for the developers to coordinate, to say, okay, hey, yesterday I got this user story done. Today I will work on this one. Who can help me with that? Oh yeah, I can do that. Okay. But I will only be here until lunch because this afternoon I have a training. Okay. So then let's start right after the daily. These tiny coordinations, this is what's going on. Or hey, yesterday I tried to do this, or we together tried to do this on the user story, but we got stuck. That's a problem. And someone else jumps in and says, hey, I had a similar problem in another project. Maybe, do you have time? Yeah, let's meet at 10 and sit together and see what we can do. This is what the daily Scrum is for. And then it is valuable.
Do you ever stop talking?
Yeah, talking too much in the daily Scrum is also a problem. It's not that everybody needs to talk, okay? This is not that everyone gives their report of, dutifully, I did the tasks as assigned by you. No. We want to assess, do we make progress towards the sprint goal? Do we need to adapt? Can we help each other? How can we coordinate for today? How can we plan the day together? That's it. And not everybody needs to talk. It's not that everyone has their 2 minutes talk time. I've seen Scrum Masters do that. Okay, they said, okay, it's 15 minutes and we have 6 people on the team. Everyone gets 2 minutes talk time. No, it's not like that. A tip is that you don't go in the daily Scrum person by person, but you just go through the your user stories. Okay, and then people can talk because usually multiple people work on a user story, and then they can just tell what they are working on or what's going on where they want to coordinate. Okay, and sometimes it's just mere coordination. It's not talking about the stories at all, but it's the planning the day together. It's not about everyone talking and proving that they did work and that they are worth their salary. Because that's old Tayloristic thinking. This is not what we want. Again, comes back to the view of the human being, to that underlying mindset. If that's not there, then of course a daily Scrum turns into a meaningless status report.
Frankly, that's just beautiful. But more importantly, where do you want to go?
Yeah. Where do you want to go? We had that already. Okay. Sprint goal. You need a sprint goal to have a meaningful daily Scrum. If you don't have a sprint goal, it's basically just the status report thing.
Problems.
Yeah, problems. Problems will come up in the daily, but this is not the place to discuss problems or solutions. Okay. If there is an issue coming up, you can quickly say, okay, let's sit together right after the daily, only the 2 or 3 people who are concerned with that. Or the Scrum Master says, hey, I'm going to take that with me and try to resolve it. Or let's talk about that in a separate workshop later on. That's all fine, but please don't start diving deep into problem analysis or solution ideas in the daily. It's subtle. It can happen without you noticing, but that's not a problem. As soon as you notice it, cut it short. It's a little like in meditation, okay? It's not a problem when you get carried away with your thoughts. It's just as soon as you notice it, it's not a problem. Just come back and cut it short and have a meet after, or plan a separate workshop or tackle it differently, but not in the daily Scrum. You will not stick to the 50 minutes otherwise.
Time's up, run!
Yeah, time's up. That's the thing. It's 15 minutes, bro. It's 15 minutes, the time box. Not more. Not a second more. I'm very pedantic here. Okay. Other time boxes might be more flexible, but this is a very hard time box, okay? And it's not a problem. Even if you didn't talk about everything, the people who didn't talk can get together afterwards and talk right away. And tomorrow will be the next daily, so it's not a big deal. Stick to the 15 minutes. Because my experience is when it's 16 minutes today, will be 25 minutes tomorrow, and before you know it, you will have a 40 or 45 minute daily scrum, which is insane. It's it's a 10% of your day, of your work day. That's unsustainable. So always keep it to 15 minutes. Yeah. By the way, there's also let's not get into this with the daily scrum. We're already short on time here. So to summarize, the daily scrum is by the developers for the developers. Team members talk to each other and sync to collaborate. Find out whether we are still on track to the goal and collaborate. How are we gonna work together as a team today? Who can work with whom? Who's available? Who has maybe some deep work time in the afternoon where they don't want to be disturbed and want rather participate in workshops in the morning? Things like that. Okay? This is what the daily scrum is for. And then it's valuable. Have people talk to each other, not to a scrum master or a manager. Okay, the sprint itself. So that 2 week, usually 2 week, sometimes 1 week, sometimes more period. That's also an event. And that's 90% of Scrum. Okay, 90% of the time is done sprinting, which means doing the work. Only about 10% go into the other 4 Scrum events. This is far better as a ratio than most other teams in traditional project management. To have 90% of your time to work. Now, of course, you have workshops, hopefully not as many useless meetings in between. Some can still be useful, but many meetings actually are replaced by the Scrum events if they are done right.
Oh no, not the waterfall! Swim!
Yeah, not the waterfall. This is waterfalling the Scrum. I mentioned that in the intro. Sprints are not that you just take your traditional big upfront planning project plan and you chunk it into 2 week pieces. And then you say, okay, we're going to do one piece after the other. That you can call that sprints, but it's not, okay? It has nothing to do with that. It will not make you any more agile than you were before. It will only confuse people. So if you have a sprint where you start with the design and then at the end you present the first design document, and after the next sprint you present another iteration of the design document, and at the third sprint then you present a database that you set up or something. That's not the idea, okay? We don't want to, it's not arbitrary chunks. The idea of a sprint is that you actually, at the end, have a working product, because that's the only true measure of progress. If you look into the Agile Manifesto, the primary measure of progress is the working product, the working solution. And we can debate all day long how working it should be, right? You don't build a car in 2 weeks. I know Joe Justice tried it and it took him 3 months. Still amazing that, or 12 weeks? 12 weeks, yeah. 3 months. It's still amazing that he could build a road-ready car that was also, it was road legal. It was licensed. It had all the compliance stuff and all that in 12 weeks from zero. But he tried to do it in 2 weeks, and obviously he couldn't build that at the time in 2 weeks. So we want to have a working solution at the end. Working solution means something that gives us feedback. This is the whole point. We want to get feedback. Feedback whether it works technically. And for that, we usually need the whole stack. We cannot give meaningful feedback on a data model sketch or something. Okay, usually you cannot get meaningful feedback on that. You'd have to build the thing or a little slice of the whole application, the whole product, to see whether it works. Okay? At Tesla, for example, they put just laptop batteries into a Lotus chassis or something, and they just watched what happened. Okay, and then they had new data points. They got feedback: what worked, what didn't work, that they could fry eggs on the batteries. It was a funny time. It was actually the time when I was in Silicon Valley back then. It was crazy to see these guys do this crazy stuff. But that got them feedback to learn and to then adapt the plan for the next sprint, and then the next sprint, and the next sprint. But if you don't have something to show that can give you meaningful feedback, either from does it technically work, or from, even better, does it create value for the customer, for the user? Getting feedback from a user, oh, this makes sense, or oh no, this is a nice idea, but it doesn't work, or I don't understand it. This is the kind of feedback you want to get quickly after a sprint. So only kind of fleshing out your plan in the first sprint and then making it even better in the next sprint and then creating design in the third sprint, that's not helpful. You won't get feedback. And then you might not sprint at all. It's just arbitrary chunks of time. Why even use Scrum or any Agile approach here? So that's important. Don't waterfall the Scrum.
And I know that when you go that deep, there's going to be some spillover.
Spillover. That's what they call unfinished user stories at the end of the sprint that kind of spill over into the next sprint. If you have a spillover, it's okay. It can happen. It's not a big deal. But if that's the rule, that most of your stories just spill over and people are oddly complacent with that and say, yeah, we just finished 5 out of our 20 planned user stories, and the other 15 are just going to roll over into the next sprint, and then we're going to add 5 more, and this is how we roll. Ugh, cringe. Again, this is traditional big upfront planning going on here. This is not the idea. You want to really make an effort to finish something at the end of the sprint to get meaningful feedback. Otherwise, why sprint at all? Okay, you want to get that feedback. Ideally, customer feedback at the end of a sprint. So spillover is okay occasionally, but if that's the norm, you have a problem, and you should just plan differently. You should you should learn from that. You should cut your user stories smaller, slice them into smaller pieces. You should maybe take fewer stuff into the sprint, maybe not create a traffic jam. Look at what's causing the spillover. Don't accept it as normal.
I'm almost done. Hold on, please. Hold on.
Yeah, the almost done, the 90% done story, that's also a debate often. If you have a 90% done story at the end of the sprint, how much value does that create to the customer? 0. So it counts as not done. 90% done is not done. It's binary, okay? You either not done or done. There is no almost done. There is no I'm a little pregnant. No, it's either or. And at the end, if you have 90% done user story, you don't count it for the velocity. Don't count 90% of the story points or some crazy stuff. Okay? You're wiping out the idea of the sprint altogether. It's okay. As an occasional spillover, you can take it over and you can finish it in the next sprint, and then it counts there. Don't worry about your velocity. It will average out because you have averages anyway. The thing is, we don't want to pretend that a 90% done car will create any value. No, it's only costing the company money. It's standing there, it's rusting, it doesn't collect feedback, it doesn't collect road data for self-driving cars. 90% done is 0 value. Only 100% done can create value and feedback. So we just want to focus on that. And so If it's not done, it's not done. Okay? That's fine. It's nobody's fault. Learn from it. Maybe finish it in the next sprint, but don't count it awkwardly, because you get velocity values that don't represent what the team is actually capable of. So to summarize the sprint, each sprint contains all phases. You don't have a test sprint, a release sprint, an implementation sprint, a hardening sprint. When you hear these words, you know they are not doing Scrum. Okay, there are no special sprints. All the sprints are the same. Every sprint has a working product at the end. Yes, even the first one. There is no sprint 0. Okay, there's no setup sprint. The first sprint is just the first tiny piece of functionality you build. Usually it's very tiny. I admit that. But focus on that. Go through all the phases. Designing, planning, implementing, testing, integrating, and deploying. All that happens in a sprint. Okay? That happens actually in each user story. You don't have separate plan and implementation sprints and test sprints. And you deliver a working product. Okay. Now move on to the sprint review. Yeah, what is done is done. Done. Yeah, done is now I see that. Thank you for the comment. Yeah, done. I have seen that. When you have the 90% done user story and people then kind of come up with, oh, it's almost done. Let's call it done. It's kind of a different topic, but it's interesting. Thank you for the comment. It's almost done. And then they mark it as done in their tracking tool. And they do that with all the user stories. And then when the point comes when they want to release and marketing, product management says, release now, then they say, wait, we still have to do the done. It's done, but it's not done. I mean, it's not deployed, it's not integrated, it's not tested. Something is missing. And that's a problem. Okay? That's also a reason why we want to have a working product at the end of the sprint, because we prove to ourselves that there is no work left, no hidden work left. It's fully integrated, it's tested, it's working, or it's not working. But we have nothing that fell through the cracks. Usually this falling through the cracks are things like integration, deployment, testing sometimes. And this aggregates over time if you don't do it. Okay? And then you have all these stories that are marked as done in your project management tool, or hopefully a product management tool. They are all marked as done, but they are not really done. You still have to do work on them. And this is just lying to yourself. Just be honest about that it's not done and do something about it. Thanks for the comment. The sprint review. Now getting to the sprint review and then the retrospective. And then we are through with all of them. The sprint review. Yeah. Going through documents is not the idea of the sprint review. Okay. People not showing a finished product, again, is defeating the purpose of the sprint review. Okay, I don't want to see PowerPoint in sprint review. There are exceptions, but I don't want to see PowerPoint slides. I don't want to see a Jira screen. I don't want to see Word documents in a sprint review. There are exceptions. If your product is a Word document, Word template or something, yes, okay. But usually I don't want to see that stuff. I want to see the real product. I want to touch it. If it's a physical thing, if it's a hardware thing, I want to touch it. The prototype. If it's a software, I want to use it. I want to click through it. Show a finished, a working product. It's never finished in that sense, but show a working product that we can kick the tires and see what work fell between the cracks. Again, it's important that we have a certain view of the human being in the company for that. Because I've seen companies where there is a very Tayloristic management style. So people are mistrusted, and people in the sprint review want to show that they did good work because managers didn't assume they did great work. They always assumed, oh, people are lazy, we have to check on them, we have to tell them what to do. And so in the sprint review, they were reluctant to show, to get feedback that something is not working. And that's not what we want. We want to see the stuff that's not working. We want things to fail. We want rockets to explode in the sprint review, okay? Look at SpaceX. They celebrate when the rocket explodes. This is what we want to do. We want to learn early on before we spend years building something that then nobody wants. This is why it's so important to show a working product in the sprint review. And it's okay if we find things out. I've once had a team in it was the finance industry, regulatory software and banking, and they had this new calculation of collateral or something, and they were proud of it, and it was a lot of work, and they collaborated well as a team to do that. And then in the sprint review, I surprised them, because usually they were used to just going through Jira and checking things. Did we do that? Yes. Okay, we did do that. We do that. And I said, no, guys, close that. Please, I don't want to see that. Show me the software. It was a software product. And then they scrambled for a minute, took 5 minutes for someone to get a laptop extra and then put it up. And to their credit, they could do that. So they showed the actual product and say, okay, now show me the calculation. How would that go? Okay, you started here and then up, and then you click here and oh. And what they noticed was that the menu item, the navigation item was missing. So the functionality was there, but you couldn't reach it. Things like that fall between the cracks. Okay, and you want to see that early on in every 2 weeks in the sprint review. You don't want that popping up with 1,000 similar things a week before release. So what they did is they said, oh, okay, you can find it through the search, and they demonstrated that the feature itself is working, and they quickly made a new user story, said, okay, we have to put the navigation item there. They also learned for next time that this is one of the first things they do when they add a new functionality. They put the navigation item so that you can reach it. So this is the idea of having a finished product. This is the value you get out of it. Not inviting any stakeholders. Being alone in your sprint review is also another common misunderstanding. The idea of the sprint review is that you get feedback from users, from stakeholders, from customers. Not inviting any customers or stakeholders. Teams sometimes sit alone, just the team, just the whole Scrum team. Developers, product owner, Scrum Master sit there and show to themselves what they did. Okay, sometimes that can be nice, because sometimes you can kind of step back a little, look at the bigger picture, see that the menu item is missing, okay, something fell between the cracks, through the cracks between the features. Yes, it can have some tiny benefit, but the real purpose here is that you have feedback from stakeholders, from users. So invite them. It might be other teams sometimes who build on your functionality. Invite them. You want to get feedback from them. They want to know what you built. Sometimes you don't get the actual customer. Sometimes you get consultants who work on site with the customer from outside. Sometimes it's just the manager, or say if you could call it the business owner or something, the person with the money interested in that, getting that in. I can remember with a car manufacturer, they had kind of internationally the people from all the countries coming in every quarter, once a quarter. And this was kind of when we did a review with them together, so that they could see what's there and could give us feedback on what they see there or what we missed. So invite stakeholders. Invite them early on. Make it clear that the sprint review is open to everybody. You want to get as much feedback as you can get.
Sit down and shut up, will you?
Yeah, and then when you have the stakeholders there, don't discourage them to give feedback. Please encourage them to speak up. Encourage them to tell you what's wrong, what's missing, what's not working. It's not a show to say everything's fine. I mean, if we are in that Tayloristic view of the human being, actually, that we mistrust people, then people are sometimes afraid of that honest feedback. So they actually discourage customers to speak up because they say, yeah, that's all coming. It's just a prototype. Don't say anything because my boss is looking at this, and if you say that we missed something, then it's gonna cost me my job or something. That's a horrible culture in a company, but I've seen it in many companies. Again, comes down to the view of the human being. So don't discourage feedback. Do the opposite. Encourage them to give feedback. Encourage them to break things. You want them to break things in the review so that you can have a chance to fix it, to learn from it, to create even more value before you finally release the product.
We stick to the plan.
Yeah, and another common pitfall is not adapting the plan in the sprint review. With all that feedback that you get, you should make changes to your product backlog. You should note, okay, we're going to push that down in priority. We're going to add that feature and pull that feature out, and we're going to change that a little. You want to adapt your plan, which is your product backlog, during the sprint review, or I've also seen product owners take notes and then adapt the actual backlog right after the sprint review, which is also fine. It's just use that feedback to adapt your plan. Because if you just stick to your original plan that you had weeks or months ago, then why even listen to feedback from customers? Okay, then if you keep executing your plan no matter what, you don't need that. So it's important to adapt your plan. Not adapting your plan is a bad sign. It's a sign that you're not agile. This is your chance to course correct, to create even more value, a more valuable product.
Don't touch any of the equipment.
Yeah, don't touch any of the equipment. Not letting stakeholders kick the tires and use the product. That's also something you should avoid. Let them touch it. Let them play around with it. Let them break it. You want to do that. I think I've emphasized that.
After our last simulation run, we decided to add 2 more substations per level, but they're not finished yet, so don't confuse them with functioning ones.
They are not finished yet. Don't confuse them with functioning ones. Discussing unfinished work is another misunderstanding in the sprint review. You don't talk about unfinished work. You don't talk about those 90% done user stories. You don't talk about the spillover and why it happened. That's internal stuff, okay? That's nothing the stakeholders need to hear. And they cannot give you feedback. I cannot give feedback on a car that is 60% done. It's impossible for me, okay? I have to drive it, or I have to, sit in the seat to tell you if it's comfortable. If it's only half done, I cannot give you feedback. So don't discuss unfinished work in the sprint review. I have seen some teams do splitting the sprint review. So you have the first part with the users and stakeholders where you get the feedback, you adapt your plan, and then you take some of the time where the stakeholders are gone and it's just the team among each other, the Scrum team, and you talk about the unfinished stories, you talk about why they are unfinished, you try to learn from it. It's kind of preparing your retrospectives, that will be next. That is fine. But usually the rule is you only show the finished stuff. You don't go through it and say, oh, this is unfinished, and we show you what we got. No. You want to get feedback from customers. Sometimes unfinished stories, and I don't want to get into the details with the 90% stories. Sometimes you can split them in a done part and an undone part. Then you can still show it. These are details. I have a blog post about that, an article on my blog. So if you want to go there, check it out. Yeah, just go to my website and to the blog. There's something about, I think it's even called 90% finished user stories or something. And then you can see a few strategies how to deal with that.
You're right, but I worked like a dog.
Yeah, we worked like a dog. The sprint review is not a justification. You don't need to prove that you worked hard. In an agile environment, again, that view of the human being, we assume that you are motivated, that you did your best, that you worked hard. And if it didn't work out this time, that's okay. We know you tried hard. Okay, you don't have to prove that to us. I know that view of the human being that I just outlined is not commonplace. So this is what agile coaches need to work on. This is a lot of my work, actually, to change this view of the human being so that sprint reviews don't become, don't press people for justification. Okay. We assume people did their best. And if it didn't work out, yes, things happen. Let's learn from that. Let's improve. So, to close off the sprint review, invite stakeholders to give you feedback on the working product so that you can adjust your plans. Well, this is a longer session than I planned, but let's go into the sprint retrospective then. New teams often confuse the review and the retrospective. They don't, or retro for short. So the review is basically for your product. You try to improve your product. You get feedback on your product and how you can create more value for the customer. This is outward facing. The retrospective is about the way you work, your process, your inner process, how you work, how you collaborate as a team, how you ensure quality and all that. This is inwards. Okay, so this is basically, you have two of these feedback loops. One feedback loop on the product and one on your work process, if you want to call it like that. So this is why the retrospective happens without stakeholders, usually. I mean, you can invite them. Sometimes it's useful, but usually it's just the Scrum team.
What happened to your mission, Captain?
One common misunderstanding is that sprint retrospectives have no continuity. They are singular events, not connected to each other. That's a problem. You want to connect them. Usually the first 5 minutes of a sprint review, you want to, the first 5 minutes of a sprint retrospective are looking back at what you did in the last retrospective. Okay? From today's retrospective, you look back, what did we do in the last retrospective? What were the action items? Did we actually do that? What we planned to change or to do differently? And what were the results? Did it move the needle? This is the first thing you should do in every retrospective, because this connects the things. You are holding yourself accountable. You are also empirically measuring whether what you tried to improve actually improved things. Okay, so that's important. Have a continuity. What did we do last time? Did it work? Did it move the needle? Yeah, the blame game. Of course, we don't want to have that. So if something goes wrong, or if we talk about where we have problems, where did we get stuck, or why couldn't we finish these user stories that are 90% done? It's not about blaming people. We are a team. It's like a good sports team. We win together, we lose together. And blaming your teammates doesn't help anybody. Okay? So this is not about blaming. So you messed up or you messed up. No, we as a team, maybe. And maybe sometimes it happened to a certain person. But then we can say, hey, good that you tried. It's not your fault. It just happened. We assume you did your best. Assuming positive intent. You hear me use that phrase a lot. API. assume positive intent. We assume you did your best. It just didn't work out. So together as a team, let's figure out how we can fix it or be better. It's important.
Problems.
Yeah. A thing that I see often is that the retrospective is only about problems. It's kind of that event where everybody vents their anger and they say, oh, we have a problem here and this is not working and we cannot get stuff from the other team and the dependencies here and the management here and the mindset of the management, oh, that's horrible. And then they feel a little better afterwards, go into their next sprint planning, and after 2 weeks in the next retro, you have the same thing and nothing is improving. So don't focus on problems in the retrospective. Yes, retrospectives start often with problems. So you have a problem defined and from there you try to improve and find solutions, but move away from problems quickly. Move towards a constructive dialogue where you look for improvements. What can you improve? Don't focus too much on problems. Don't create the negativity and don't get stuck in that problem loop. Okay, you want to move it. The retrospective is fundamentally about improving, not about the problems. Having no action items at the end of the retro is also a problem. Okay, just doing nothing. This happens often in conjunction with the talking about the problems a lot. Then at the end, there's no clear course of action. What you want is you want to close off each retrospective with clear action items. What do we need to do? Or what do we plan to do? Also connected to that is don't have too many action items because you will not get them done. Okay? My rule of thumb is usually have 2 or 3 action items that you take out of the retrospective, not more. Because you have work to do, things will happen, there's so much, and 2 or 3 specific improvements are usually enough. Okay, maybe it's a little different for your team. You can wrap up to 4 or 5, or you just do 1. Doesn't matter, but limit it. Don't have 10 or 15 improvement items or action items, because I can promise you nothing will get done. You will get frustrated. Yeah, having the castle in the clouds, meaning you don't have specific action items, but just vague improvement ideas. Oh yeah, we should improve testing. That would then make us better and faster. Yeah, nice, dude, but make it specific, okay? Maybe have a rule, okay, for each piece of code you touch, if it doesn't have a unit test yet, you add one, even if it's not a new feature. Okay, but something like that. Or you, I don't know, run the unit test before you merge the branch or something. Or, hey, we need to kind of set up a CI/CD server in the first place. Make it very specific, okay? Action item specific. Something that you can do in the next 2 weeks. Not vague ideas like communicate better or improve testing. There's also the local optimization, okay? So we improve, but the other team misses out, okay? We create trouble for the other team. This is called local optimization. And that's, frankly, a tricky problem. Because when you improve in your retrospectives, in your team, it feels great. You're improving. Each and every team does that on their own. But collectively, you might actually harm things. Sometimes you improve and you can churn out more stuff, but a team downstream, if you don't have fully stream-aligned teams, which many big corporations cannot, is now the team downstream is now overwhelmed by what you put on them. Or you optimize for yourself. You say, okay, we skip that part of documentation because we don't need it. But some other department is depending on that documentation. And now they have more work because they need to kind of figure out the information. That's the problem of local optimization, but global sub-optimization, okay? So an important aspect is also that Scrum Masters of the single teams get together, build a community of practice, get together and coordinate. Maybe there are things that are happening in multiple teams and you can kind of fix the problem together. Or you see that by doing this in one team, it might actually optimize it for one team, but make it worse for the other team. And the global impact might be actually negative. And then you can coordinate. So this is basically the only example here that I have where you go on, Klaus Leopold would say flight level 2. You go one level higher with the coordination between the teams. Just have an eye on that. Communication is the key here. Talk. Scrum Masters should talk. So, sprint retrospective, the last of the events for today. Focus on small improvements, action items, that you actually implement. Okay? Continuity, check whether you did it. It's not a problem if you didn't do it. Things happen. But just check, did you do it? And did it move the needle? Okay. And this is how we can turn this ugly feller, this misunderstanding of all the 5 Scrum events. Okay. Sprint planning would be handing out tasks. The daily Scrum would be a status report. The sprint would actually just be a waterfall chunk of time. And at the end, we would check progress and discuss problems. That is totally absurd. That's not Scrum. That is what most call waterfall. I mean, this is a strange term because there is no pure waterfall anywhere out there in the world, or hardly there is. But this is just not Scrum, what you see here, okay? The difference is the view of the human being underlying this. So if you look at the Scrum events with a Tayloristic mindset, you get that. You get that horrible zombie of pseudo-Scrum, fake Scrum, or sometimes called Scrumfall. But if you accept a modern view of the human being, that I hinted at the studies starting in the 1950s, look at it, about intrinsic motivation, look at McGregor's management models, look at behavioral science. Then once we have that view of the human being, that assuming positive intent, API, assuming that people want to work, they are intrinsically motivated. And if they mess up, they likely had good intentions. If we can accept that modern view of the human being, suddenly all the Scrum events turn into something different. Now we don't need to assign tasks to people because we trust them that they will pull tasks once they have time available. In fact, what happens in Agile teams is often that they pull too much. We have to kind of take care of them, that they don't overload themselves. So we can focus in the planning on setting a team goal, a sprint goal. In the daily Scrum, we can focus on the team sync because we don't need to check on people that they report their status. We trust them to get the work done. So they can coordinate among each other and check their progress towards the sprint goal. We can have sprints that really have a working product at the end instead of just an arbitrary list of tasks that we checked off on our pre-made project plan. At the end, in the sprint review, we don't need to check whether people made progress. We can openly listen to feedback and adapt to that feedback, adapt our plans to that. And in the retrospective, we don't need to wallow in problems and try to blame people. We just can focus on improving stuff. And this green version here, this is what Scrum actually is. Okay, it looks similar. The events are called similar in both cases. But just that little bit in between, that different view of the human being, turns the interpretation of all the events into something that actually creates value and agility. And that is what I want to leave you with today after this almost 1.5 hour session. I planned an hour for that. I totally overshot. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for participating. Again, check out the website, the blog, if you want to go there. The probably most comprehensive thing you can do is just join my newsletter for free. I talk about this stuff a lot, not only Scrum, also the general thing like view of the human being and how to make agility actually work. So I've been doing this for over 20 years. I said that initially. So I've seen a lot. I've done this in a time when there was no money to be made in agility. Yes, there was such a time. And I was there. I believe in this stuff because I've seen it work. So this is what I want to pass on to as many people, as many Agile coaches, Scrum Masters, developers, leaders, everyone who just wants to create better products, do better work, and create a more profitable business. And overall create a better world. This is what this is all about. So if you want to join me, join the Agile Compass, or just connect with me on LinkedIn, on X, on wherever. And yeah, again, thanks for listening today. Happy that so many people participated. I hope I could give you some value, some new insights into Scrum. If you have questions about that, maybe about your specific situation, please just contact me. You can write me on LinkedIn, just do that, or on X. Just contact me, no worries. I love to hear from people, and I'll do my best to help wherever I can. Thank you for that, and see you next time.